Interesting initial conversation around, war efforts or preparedness in the sense of geopolitical issues. This is big, and it's important to recognize. And one of the things that, and I was about to say as part of our conversation, was not recognizing the impact of climate change. Okay, we could go on a tear about, the climate change and its evil effects and so on and so forth, all of which is true, but I'm not denying any of that. But, the Northwest Passage is now real. It's not something that people are going to freeze to death trying to find. There are ships that are getting ready, if not have already gone through the Northwest Passage.
Yeah.
That has a huge implication to all kinds of things. Never mind the Arctic and the Arctic region, the ocean and the Arctic Ocean itself, and the wildlife, the ice pack, and so on and so forth. There's that issue. But even beyond all that, how does one exercise one's control, suzerainty over certain areas now that are part of public passage, ships of all nations, and what kind of ships are going through, and what are they carrying? And not to get too paranoid about this, but at the same time, it's about recognizing that things are no longer the same.
Right. And I think it's grounded in the idea that first, the United States of America doesn't recognize it as a Canadian waterway. It is an international passageway. That has a lot to do with the strait between Taiwan and mainland China and other South China Sea issues, where if you recognize mine, I have to recognize yours, that type of thing.
Right.
So if the Chinese government or any other government was to formally state that the Northwest Passage is considered international waters to them, which means they are not required to follow any regulations the Canadian government institutes, and they are going to pass through it with or without permission and will not heed to calls from the Canadian Coast Guard. What is the Canadian government willing to do to enforce when the Canadian government believes it has sovereignty over that waterway? And exactly, it doesn't matter why the waterway is becoming open. The waterway is becoming open for a longer and longer period. And because it saves a significant amount of money going from Europe to Asia by transiting through that passageway versus transiting down through the Panama Canal, which has a whole host of issues and problems with drought on its own, we have to have the ability to, number one, reinforce our sovereignty. And is Canadian Navy and Coast Guard ready to board a foreign ship and seize control when it fails to heed? We ready for that level of international confrontation? Are we ready to take it on? We saw just recently what happened when Canada decided to put tariffs on Chinese EV vehicles, and China government came back with an investigation into canola.
Yes.
Which is a $2.5 billion industry to Canada, right?
Yes.
So, you stop somebody's ship, you have to be ready to accept all of the secondary and tertiary effects of that. I don't know that, forget the political leadership, I don't know if we have the skill set to be able to do that.
Yes. And again, this gets to the heart. I know we're talking about very large issues that you and I, in my household, your household, what does this have to do with me? But from a preparedness point of view, just it becomes it raises a series of questions around viability and legality and liability and all kinds of other things. And preparedness is not the same thing as protectionism. We're not talking about preventing the Northwest Passage from being used. We're talking about how is it being used properly so that well, whatever the word properly means, that in itself, I just, even as I'm questioning myself as I'm using the term,
Who gets to
because,
define that?
yeah, who defines what's proper
Yep.
and so on and so forth. And it raises this whole issue around, what is acceptable, what is proper. As I prepare myself to deal with exogenous issues and events, and we can get into a whole issue around what is an exogenous event,
Mhm.
that in itself has its own issues and long discussion. But then we're talking about the what if scenarios. Let's take, for example, let's not worry about what's being carried or what nationality is carrying something in a ship. Right? One can always do a Liberian flag and
Sure.
and carry anything you want.
Yep.
I mean, it's already being done. So
Oh yeah.
let's stop talking about this nation versus
Yeah.
that nation. You just go to a neutral. You can go to the Cayman Islands.
Flag of convenience. Yeah.
It's a location and a license of convenience. Uh, so it's just because it's a passage and it's open and there are ships going back and forth. Uh, who maintains the roadway, as I say?
Yep.
Who's got the responsibility? There's the operative term that everybody has to deal with is who's got the responsibility to do what needs to be done. Never mind predetermine what needs to be done. That's a wide open door to begin with.
So I mean that we have an example for that in Canada, and that is aircraft over the north. So we have, because of the way the world is shaped, most European flights going to Asia fly right over top of the North Pole,
Right.
or many to North America will fly down through the Arctic. And so Canada, as part of the international agreement for air travel, have responsibility for having a major rescue capability in the north of Canada should an A380 go down on an Arctic ice sheet. And it's a major kit. This is not secret information. It sits at CFB Trenton. It's called Mage Aid, and there's food, water, clothing, and everything else all ready to be parachuted out of aircraft for 300 people. And there's a search and rescue plan. I was the head of a medical platoon at one point to work on the evacuation of the wounded and all this other stuff. So we have gone through the international agreement process of setting up protection for the highly unlikely but the significant severe event if a passenger aircraft goes down in the Arctic.
Right.
The Canadian standards for single hull versus double hull versus other shipping standards are not the same as around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Different. Like when you own the Suez Canal, you can tell the world what the standard is to go through the Suez Canal. When you own the 300-kilometer economic zone off of the coast of Ghana, you can't tell people what they're allowed to sail through that.
Yeah.
Right? You're 12 miles, but by 12 miles, if you have a spill, it's too late.
Yeah.
So it comes to the point of I think things like this fall into that wonderful international agreement space of we'll come to that based upon a whole bunch of other considerations. And so preparedness speaks to knowing that these potentials exist. Should we, as a nation, adopt some proactive measure to be able to deal with a potential loss, irrespective of how it occurs, on our highway that we maintain the aids to navigation to get everybody through? Somebody has an accident. It's going to be us the world looks to clean it up, and it'll be us that will wear all of the loss from it.
Yeah. That in itself is a critical question that we should be considering in terms of our own individual household approach to preparedness. In the face of the what if, Well, the way you described it is the world is going to act in a reactive mode in the event that something happens.
Yeah.
The assumption being the likelihood of that happening is we're going to assume, again, the assumption is that it's not going to happen. But the likelihood of it happening is probably a little more real than we think, because, you're talking about geographical location. We're talking about how rural can you get, how off the grid can you be, and yet in this modern age, you're flying in a tube, aka plane or jet or whatever you want to call it, that is vulnerable to all kinds of things. Those of us who fly a lot, like me, still find flying miraculous.
Fascinating. It is.
It's fascinating, but
Oh
it's
yeah.
also miraculous. How the hell do we get up there? And and how the hell do we stay up there? There are no guy wires holding this. This is not a MacGyver moment.
No.
This is physics, aerodynamics, whatever term you want to use, and I'm dumbfounded by it. Yet, at the same time, you fly over areas, and damn well there ain't nothing there.
No.
When I used to go to China on a regular basis, flying into Shanghai. The national airline that I used at the time, had developed a shorter route. The original, or the first times I went, you would go to Vancouver, then you'd wait over for 2 or 3 hours, then you'd catch a flight to, and that was often enough 19 hours. And so you arrived in Shanghai and immediately went to bed. Now, they came up with a single plane, no stop, no interchange route that took 14 hours. You go, wow, this is pretty cool. But if you, like me, like window seats, you look out and you say, where the hell are we?
Yeah.
Well, you're flying over Alaska. We're flying over the Bering Sea. It doesn't matter what season it is. We're talking white down there. We're talking ice. This is solid ice pack, full stop. All right. And you're going, wow, isn't that beautiful? It is. Then you get to the coast of what would be the top of Asia. Oh, where are you? Siberia. You are crossing over the territory of Siberia, and you look down, and then you get to see the Kamchatka Peninsula, where Vladivostok is. And the geography maps we have are very, very good, because what you look at and see,
what you see,
it's there. You're just going, wow, that's pretty cool. Somebody drew it right. No, that's reality.
Yeah.
Then you notice that you're flying over multiple nations. You're flying over North Korea. You're going, okay, what does that mean? You're flying over Japan. Okay, that's fine. And then you're landing in Shanghai, off of the Yangtze River. But you are witnessing geography in all of its reality.
Yeah.
Every step of the way, unless you're totally caught up in sleeping or reading the book that you desperately have to read in those 14 hours, and you don't exercise even the slightest bit of curiosity, you miss the point that you have crossed multiple nations. You have also crossed something that is even more fascinating, and that's the international date line.
Yeah.
And you're going daytime into nighttime, or nighttime into daytime, instantaneously.
Yeah.
And it says, what the hell is that? And why all of a sudden am I in the middle of the day? I left at night,
Yeah.
and your whole world begins, your body, your mind, everything about you begins to change. All right. And no matter how curious you are, you already know that there's an edge here that is totally out of your control.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing when you go to foreign places and you it's not that you feel unsafe, it's unfamiliar,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? It's like most places that I've been around the world, other than a few things I went with the army, I was never unsafe. I was just unfamiliar with, what am I supposed to do here? Like I love going to Dublin and down on the sidewalks it says look left
Oh, yes. London is like that too.
or look right, whatever way
Yeah.
you're like,
Look this, it actually didn't say left or right because
or
British,
look this way.
it says look this way
Yeah.
because they don't want you to get confused over what's left and
Well,
what's
right, because you're like, I, I'm not the first foreigner here,
oh no.
right? I'm not the first tourist here, but you look on the ground, you're like, I would have never thought that
Yes,
because I would have naturally turned my head in the direction from
exactly.
my home and I would have stepped right out in front of traffic.
That's right.
And it's really a lot of it is like I wrote a piece this week on oh, it's about oh, I'm losing my track now. It's something about when we each individual preparedness. I'm gonna pull it up here because I'm my brain is driving me nuts when it's like this. And you get this, oh, I got a great idea here. And it leaves you, right? The culture of preparedness. And so I was on a pre-debate recording. Like I'm on a panel later this fall and I got the privilege to sit alongside of Brock Long, the former head of FEMA in the US, talking about the culture of preparedness, right? And it's the idea of we all support these systems, the aircraft systems, everything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And it works brilliantly.
Yep.
98.7% of the time,
Yep.
everything around you, every light switch you flip works. What we used to have, and our grandparents' generations used to be responsible for what happened when the system didn't work.
Yes.
We don't have that culture anymore.
No.
If the system doesn't work, we believe that it is somebody else's responsibility to
Yep.
provide for me
Yep.
while that system is down. Any one of the sectors, transportation, water, sewer, power in your house, whatever it may be, we have we lack a culture of preparedness. And this is the argument that we were having is how do we persuade people to understand that when one of your normal systems pauses, I don't want to use the word fail, but just pauses for a period of time, it's actually your job to be ready to fill that gap.
Yes.
And we were having some good debates about how do we encourage that culture of preparedness to return, right? It doesn't mean people should, we do it as a group, we do it community through building social capital, building strong sense of community, but it's how do we start that conversation? How do we get people thinking about, when the power goes out and I need power, it's not a question of somebody else has failed. It's a question of how do I get the power that I need?
Yep.
While I'm waiting for Toronto Hydro, Ottawa Hydro, Hydro
Yep.
One, whatever, to turn
Yeah.
back on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is the culture of preparedness is about that strategic thinking.
Yeah.
About what does my world look like without this? What might go wrong?
Yeah.
What might cause me, considering how I live, what might cause me a significant issue?
Yeah. The word that came to mind as you were talking, my mind as you were talking was we live in a rescue culture.
Yeah.
We want to be rescued. Now, I find it fascinating. It'd be interesting to do some study on this or research on it or find out, what's the origin of that need for us to be rescued? Where does it come from? When did it technically start as a cultural phenomenon, because I mean, when we think historically, going back to great grandparents and so on and so forth, they didn't have a sense of you need to rescue me. There were infrastructure or support systems, I should say, rather than infrastructure, support systems that took care of that outside, inside the family, for example, inside the farm, if you will, inside the four walls. It doesn't mean that people do not need or never needed to be rescued. I think everybody needs to be rescued going back millennia.
Oh, at some point or another.
Yeah, whether the
Absolutely.
saber-toothed tiger is, coming after you or not, someone needs to rescue you from, becoming lunch or dinner, or depending on the time of the day. But, it isn't the phenomenon of being rescued that is the issue. It is the need for infrastructure to be the mechanism of rescue. And that infrastructure is not restricted to inside the four walls. It's the assumption is, we go back to that term, the assumption is that there's someone out there who is going to rescue me. This doesn't mean I'm not responsible. It just means there's somebody else more responsible than I am.
Yeah.
And I'm depending on them. So it's a culture of dependency.
That's the way I phrase it, is a culture of dependency. And when you look, I trace it back to, as we developed a more and more modern society and a more and more technologically enabled society, our ancestors, we're not that old, but our ancestors grew their own food. So eventually, in high density locations, people lose the ability to grow their own food. So we transfer that responsibility to a system, a food growth and distribution system we pay money for. Somewhere along the line, it's not that I just pay money at the store, but if your store's not available, it's your responsibility to give me the alternate.
Yes. Yes.
And I think that's really where it changed. Now, it's the same as I wrote something this morning on LinkedIn about the potable water. And there's been a number of cyber incidents in the United States where local, either Iranian or other government that I won't mention, have attacked the cyber infrastructure of water treatment plants in the United States, trying to either shut them down or change the chemical levels through a cyber attack that is used. And it was like, okay, I live in a city of a little bit more than 1 million people. You live in a GTA of 6 million.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when the water's not available?
Mm-hmm.
When it's past the boil water point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There is no way
Yep.
to deliver fresh water to 6 million people.
No.
So at that point, is it a question of I have a responsibility to figure out an alternate source, or is somebody failing by not coming up with an alternate source for me?
Yeah. It's fascinating how exposed often enough the infrastructures that we depend on are actually more exposed than we're willing to admit.
Oh, yeah.
For example, my father always hated Toronto water because it's got too many chemicals in it. Well, yeah, it comes out of Lake Ontario. Give me a break. You're not going to drink that
I'd
stuff.
put chemicals in it too.
But New York water is I would say qualitatively different because of where it comes from. It comes out of the Catskill Mountains. And when you drive north out of New York and you're going through the Catskill Mountains, you suddenly come upon this absolutely stunning lake, right? And it's actually the dammed water that is the drinking water for New York City.
Yeah.
It's stunning. You just go, wow, what the hell is this? And you're about maybe 2 hours max from New York City, but this is the water supply. We are talking about an exposed lake.
Yep.
Okay, this is not underground. This is not in any way covered. This is the water that people drink. Now, of course, it goes through a filtering process. Obviously, it isn't just going to go from, because people go in there and swim and people also
Yeah.
fish and so on. It is a natural water lake that is large enough because it's been dammed. All of the rivers have been dammed and maintained at a certain level so that that water feeds into New York City.
Yep.
But it's a lake, folks. It's not a cistern with a top. It's
Yep.
a lake. And you go, you depend on that for your fresh water. Whatever the filtering process is, which of course everybody knows it has to go through, nonetheless, the vulnerability of that setup is so phenomenal. I think it's out of the mindset of anybody to consider. They just assume that everything is fine. It's a beautiful lake in a beautiful location, and this is absolutely gorgeous, and everything is fine.
Yep, everything's fine here, folks. Keep moving along. There's nothing to see. They had one water source that was quoted in the Forbes magazine said something like eight or 9 out of 10 of modules that were installed in the water treatment plant, the default passwords hadn't been reset from the manufacturer when it was hooked into the system. So the nefarious actors entered the water treatment through this module, which is connected to the internet using the default password.
Yeah.
And then they're inside the system. And think of all of the structures that keep it going. Think about what happens. You and I remember the 2003 outage, the brownout in Toronto.
Oh, yeah.
There was several instances where cell networks get hacked and taken offline because of things like that. And then depending on what you do, how dependent we are upon that system to just do what we normally want to do in our personal or professional lives.
Well, we just had an incident here in the office yesterday. And I go, oh, really? There's a part of me, Dr. J, where there are days I just don't want to come in.
I hear you.
Folks, leave me alone. What do you want me to do? The south wall, which is in the other side of the office, so it's a fairly large office. All the desks and everybody's plugged in to the electrical system on the south wall. Now that's a circuit that's separate from the north wall, separate from this side. So there are different circuits that was set up. And what was fascinating is everybody's got their computers going. They're all working at their desks. My team, there's another group that works there as well that we sublet to. And everybody's working away. And it's chilly. Now, here we go, folks. This is where, where the ordinary, where the you use the phrase shizzy hits the
busy, yeah.
Busy. This is the ordinary just going, what did you do?
Yeah.
And so people are cold, sitting at their desks. And so one person plugs in a space heater, and another person plugs in a second space heater, and they crank it up, and the entire wall goes blank.
Yep.
And everybody's going, oh, what happened? Of course, I'm about to leave. And they're going, what do you mean what happened? And I looked at it, I said, okay. I said, rule number 8,242. Don't you ever again plug in a space heater to the exact same circuit where you are now plugging every other goddamn machine in and expect it to carry.
Yeah.
Is the north wall's got plugs. Put your space heaters there, pull them far enough away from the north wall so that it heats the whole area.
Yeah.
That's not the whole issue. Yeah. It gets even more interesting. Then I'm told both last night, yesterday as I'm trying to leave, and this morning that people were running around looking for the box. And I said, the box? What are you talking about? Well, where are the circuit breakers? Aren't they in the kitchen? I said, how long have you been here? When was the last time you saw a circuit breaker here in the office? Oh, see the room across the hall outside of the office? That room has all the circuit breakers for the entire floor. And it's locked. We can't get in there. Why? Because then anybody could get in there and start going, ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And our neighbors will just, come to a dead end. The other neighbors will come to a dead end. We'll come to a dead end, and the whole floor will come to a dead end. No, it's kept under lock and key. And well, who's got the key? Well, it depends. We're talking about, I want to go home. This isn't my wall. My wall's working fine.
Yeah.
So we're going through this step by step by step, and I'm going, really, folks? Okay, from now on, you have to recognize, so preparedness. And it's that reactive mode. Now we know.
Yeah.
You don't plug in 2 million different appliances into the one plug. Okay, it's the kiss of death. So that's never going to happen again. And if it does, you'll find yourself working somewhere else. It's as simple as that. Because if you think I'm running around waiting for an electrician, you're out of your freaking mind.
Yeah.
Right? That's number one. Number two, no, the box is not in here. Why not? Because it's not our building. Okay?
We didn't design it this way.
We didn't design it. They designed it. The owners designed it, and they're recognizing that the electrical room covers more than just us.
Yeah.
All right. So the property manager and I go in, and we're playing with all of the ours, not anybody else's. And both of us are looking at the board. And I'm saying to myself, I want to go home. I just want to go home. This is not my problem. I just want to go home. And so all the circuits are on. Like there's nothing has gone the other way. And we're going, what the hell is this all about? All right. So they have to get the electrician in. So how long am I going to wait? I decided I don't care. Went home instead.
Yeah.
Came in this morning because I come in super early. I'm the first one here. And I go, I have no idea whether anything is working. Did the electrician come in or not? Well, what did everybody do? They turned everything off.
Yep.
Which gave me a clear indication, which of course they should have, but it gave me a clear indication that the electrician didn't actually do anything. So here I am sending messages at dawn to the property manager, and he's going, what? But there was electric, this is like, now messages are going back and forth. And one of the electricians shows up and says, we did this last night, and he shows everything is fine. They had turned the extension cords off. So the little red light on the extension cords wasn't showing. Now, the only reason I'm telling this story is because I find it incredibly funny, right? When we say an exogenous event is going to occur, we think of tsunamis, floods. We think of, snowstorms are going to shut everything down. We think of power outages. I have just given a story about plugging too many appliances into the electrical system that we depend on. That's an internal problem, but it's a problem.
Yep. Well, absolutely. It's in exogenous shocks they don't have to be miraculous, natural, huge events that happen or political turmoils or wars or conflict. It can be just something as, my neighbor drove their car into my car Like it didn't happen, but just as an example, imagine if it
Oh,
did
okay,
and I needed to go somewhere,
right.
right? I needed to drive downtown. I needed to go pick my kid up from work, whatever
Yep,
I
yep,
needed to go golfing, whatever it may be. And somebody drove into my car. Now I got to deal with a smashed car and all the things I got
exactly.
to do. And now it's beyond my control. Here I am. I got to deal with it. Do I have any idea how to deal with it? And when you adopt a culture of preparedness, and this was the argument that I'm going to make in the panel at the end of the month, is other decisions become that much easier
Yeah,
because you've thought through the
yep,
major big muscle movements.
yes,
The small muscle movements are far less impactful
yes,
when you've worked through the big possible muscle movements. So
yep,
if I understand, listen, when I lose power because I'm going to, it happens. Poop
yes,
happens.
yes,
I know, and the people living in the house with me know what we intend to do. It's
yeah,
not complicated. It's not
no,
stress inducing. And actually, it brings down the anxiety. I know. I know when the cell network comes down, like we know how to communicate. We know how to set things up. We know how to carry on and do what we need to do when the systems we rely on support. It's the same reason why, they always say that the average Canadian family is 27 meals or 9 days from catastrophe. Because I don't know. I've never seen the study. I've heard that it kicked around a lot, but I've never seen the data behind it. The average Canadian family has about 9 days of food. So if you take away the food system, the argument is after 9 days, Canadians won't be able to eat anymore.
okay. Okay, some of us, that's a good thing, but that's okay. That's a weight issue.
Some
Uh,
of us could use a day off or two.
that's one way of getting rid of pounds. But as you're talking, I'm thinking of my newly renovated kitchen, which is not high-end renovation. It's just, new appliances and so on and so forth. And it's all electric. Everything, when you think of appliances, that people's kitchens, it's almost, I would say the dominant source is hydro.
Yeah.
So let's say there is an outage, right? And of course, you're told don't open your refrigerator or freezer too often because you want to protect what's in there.
Yep.
And it's still going to remain cold inside the box. Fine. How do you cook anything if
Yep.
you don't have stuff already cooked?
Yep.
As you're talking, I'm going, whoa, wait a minute. Wait. Okay, I probably will be able to get water, so I could potentially boil water in order to make pasta, cook pasta. How do you boil water when your range is electric?
Yep. Yep.
I, you got, I, the only thing I could probably eat or drink, or mostly drink, is all the wine I have, never mind the scotch and all the other stuff. That stuff is easy. It's
Oh
gonna
yeah.
kill me. It's gonna kill me,
I
but
don't need the power outage to get rid
I
of
don't need
that.
a power outage for that. As a matter of fact, a power outage is even nicer because I have
Yep.
candles.
Yep.
It's now creating atmosphere so I can enjoy a good single malt. However, how this is a question, unless you're the kind of person who pre-cooks everything and puts it in the freezer, right, as already cooked, in order to take it out during an outage where you don't have to cook it, but at least it's ready to eat in some way, shape, or form. How do we survive that?
Well, exactly. And that's thinking of food as a system and realizing that you have to store it. And then you also have to dispose of the leftovers,
Well,
right? Well, you can't assume that you can just all the rest of the systems will continue to work. But it's like I my standard is my wife is a tea drinker. God love her. She's loves her tea. And if I cannot make her a hot cup of tea, I am in big trouble. It doesn't matter what's going on. So I have to be able to boil water wherever we are. If we're driving down the road and we're stuck in a traffic jam because of an accident, I have to be able to make her a hot cup of tea on the side of the road. So I carry that in the car.
See?
Right. And so I think through, like in my house, I have many alternate ways to heat food. That doesn't require power. I mean, I have a gas stove, but even if the gas system is off, I have alternate sources because I'm a backcountry camper. So I have camp stoves and various other things. But there are ways to figure out how to do that. So I can boil water to cook pasta. Because if I keep opening the fridge to take the stuff out of the fridge, I'm defeating the purpose
Oh, exactly.
of
Yeah.
having the fridge. And
Yeah.
so, but what if I also have a battery pack that I can hook my fridge up to for a couple hours a day to keep the fridge running for an extended period of time. So I never lose anything out of my fridge.
But think about it. Think about this slightly differently. You live in a townhouse.
Mm-hmm.
You probably have, I'm going to make an assumption here, you can correct me, you either have a front yard or a backyard or both.
Both, yeah.
Yeah. So actually taking your propane facilities capability outside and cooking is real.
Yep.
I can't do that.
Well, you don't have a balcony, I'm assuming.
My balcony is completely enclosed.
Okay. But you're able to
Go up to the roof.
well, no, you can go to the roof, or you can get into your enclosed balcony, open the windows to the
Oh yeah,
enclosed
yeah, yeah,
balcony,
yeah,
and
yeah.
close the windows to your.
It's got doors, but
Right.
yeah, yeah.
So you're going to
It
have
is
a system,
open. It can open out to the
right?
air. Yes.
So you can, for short periods of time with that ventilation, fire up a burner and heat up a cup of coffee, tea, boil some water, make some pasta, heat a meal.
The issue though is under municipal law, what are you allowed to keep inside your apartment? Are you allowed to keep propane?
But that'll be a bylaw where we are as to what type of explosives are allowed to keep inside of your
Exactly.
in your residence. But there are alcohol stoves, which are denatured alcohol, which
Yeah.
doesn't have any explosive capability that is perfectly fine. So you're right. There may be restrictions imposed on you because of municipal bylaws. But it's like to say, like, how many bylaws say you can't have propane barbecues on apartment balconies that are less than so many square foot? And then you drive around Toronto and everybody's got one.
Well, actually in Toronto, it's 100% disallowed. Doesn't mean people don't do it.
Well, this is what I mean. And they're not running around. The bylaw police aren't staring up.
Oh, yeah, come on, give me a break. Bylaw police are.
Yeah.
Let's not go down there.
They're worried about bike lanes, not barbecues.
Exactly, exactly. But what's interesting about all this is your way of life or lifestyle is something you have to actually look at.
Yep.
In order to go through what would be your ordinary everyday assumptions and ask the critical question, what if?
Yep.
What if I need to do this? Am I not allowed? That's not the issue, all right? Because survival is survival here.
But how?
It's how can I do this? So I have a pantry full of dry macaroni, okay, pasta. What do you do with it if you can't cook it? And that's a question that someone like me and others who live in these kinds of situations have to think about. Because your preparedness and my preparedness, the issues are, all right, the global issues are the same, but the actual ability to handle the issue is different.
Yeah, absolutely. Your conditions are going to be different than mine. And on top of that, the number of people you have to feed. Because, if you're feeding 5 people, that's a lot more water you got to boil for pasta,
yeah.
which means a lot more fuel.
Yes.
Etc. And these are all considerations that have to be taken in. Like, for example, okay, you got a propane stove, but okay, how much propane do you keep?
Yeah. Yeah.
How long do you want to be able to cook for? How many meals do you want to be able to cook? How
Yeah.
much? Now you realize, oh, it's just not grabbing a canister of propane off of Canadian Tire shelf and carrying on. It's no. Do I want, because for example, my brother lives in PEI when Hurricane Fiona came through. He was out of power for about 13 days
Yeah.
and he has an all electric house.
Yeah. Of course.
And so he had, and I laughed all the time. I said, you do know what your brother does for a living, right? Come on, bud. Like, seriously. So he was down at the community center, hooking his cell phone in to charge it and getting a hot cup of coffee,
What?
right?
Yeah.
He's
Right.
now been through the experience,
That's right.
right? He now has a camp stove. He
Yeah.
has a 1,000-watt battery pack with a solar panel so that he can generate
Mm-hmm.
literally for time immemorial
Mm-hmm.
all the power he needs as a single gentleman living in a small house, and never be in the situation again where a loss of mains power, as the Brits would say, causes him disruption.
Well, again, these are things we do in reaction to an issue we've experienced,
Right.
situation we've experienced. I mean, when Toronto was hit by the mega snowstorm that actually crippled the entire city for right during rush hour, actually before rush hour, it started early in the morning, and there was no way I could get home. Right? Lesson learned, I did get home. We won't even talk about, how, but the lesson learned is I now have a sofa, that green ugly thing behind me. I have blankets, I have pillows.
Yeah.
I have all of the things I need to change myself, to wash myself, so on and so. If I have to camp out here,
Yep.
with an assumption that the hydro is still going to be working, I have access to coffee, I have access to all kinds of things. I actually can camp out here for a full 48 hours if I had to. Right. And why did I do that? Because I realized if I don't do it, the experience of 2 or 3 years ago says you're being stupid if you don't do it.
Well, exactly. And when I champion the culture of preparedness, I'm trying to have that conversation with people before they have an experience to relate to.
Yeah.
So it's how do I persuade, how do I encourage the population to have these considerable conversations
Yeah.
prior to having the personal experience and exposure to those bad days.
Yeah. But we live, again, we go back to the theme one of the themes we started off with. We live in a rescue culture.
Yeah. Dependency.
It's a dependency on someone else who's going to take care of things for us.
Yep.
Even if I do have blankets and whatever here, and I can spend the 24 to 48 hours without, dying, even if it is on an ugly couch that I have to sleep on. After a certain amount of time, my expectation is this damn well better change.
Yep.
And it's someone else who's going to make it change.
Yep.
If they don't get the plows out in order to handle this properly, then we've got a bigger problem than just 24 to 48 hours. Now it becomes serious.
Yep.
It's an inconvenience. Now, again, the whole rescue comes in when we go through this whole spectrum of experience from this is an inconvenience, but I can handle it, to this is a critical issue. Someone else has to handle this because it's outside of my capability.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the same question of you take the TTC to work in the morning.
Yeah.
And you use an alternate transportation system to get home. So you figured out that, okay, it isn't the only thing I can use. There are alternates. You
Right.
have different options that are available.
Yes.
That in alone is a culture of preparedness.
Yes.
Because you don't have to, okay, now how do I get home because the TTC is not available?
Yeah.
You know that there's Uber. You know that there's taxis.
Yeah.
You know there's Lyft out there. You know there could be friends that are at least going to get you,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
aimed in the right direction and a quarter of the way there till you can
Yeah.
keep
Yeah.
hopscotching your way
Yeah.
home. But
Yeah.
that only happens when people think about
Yes.
the calamities that they may find themselves in. And again, and it's an exogenous shock for you and I, it might be inconvenient. So if the public transit system in Ottawa shuts down, all I know the result for me is there's going to be an exceptional great increase in the number of cars on the road.
Yes.
Really? But
Yeah.
unless I'm going downtown or somewhere significant,
Who cares?
whatever. It's
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah. It's the who
But
cares.
if I need to use public transit every day to get to and from
Yes.
my work, and
Yes.
I don't have an alternate,
Yes.
it
Oh.
becomes a catastrophic. And if I'm an
Oh.
hourly employee,
Yep.
in other words, I don't go, I don't get paid. And
Yeah.
welcome to Canada, where so many families are living within a couple $100 of not making
Right.
ends meet.
That's right.
2 days of no transit, you can push some families over the economic
Oh,
hump.
no, yes, no two ways about it. It's, as a matter of fact, what I was lucky in that snowstorm, the landlord here, the owner of the building, Elliot, he lives not too far from where I live in, not quite the same neighborhood, but he also has an SUV. He has like a Jeep. He's got a big, monster. And he said, well, I'm driving home. Let me drive you home. That's how I got home.
Yep.
On the way home, I noticed people who had to walk in close to snow up to their knees just to get home.
Yep.
At the end of the day, and it was still snowing. And I said to myself, damn it, I am completely, incredibly lucky.
Yep.
These people have no alternatives.
Or people who don't have outdoor walking shoes with them because they expected to jump on the TTC.
Yeah, yeah. Well, here in Canada, including Toronto, people are not that stupid. When it's winter,
They are in Ottawa.
oh, I know.
Yes.
Oh, I know.
Yes, they are. There are many pictures of when our LRT breaks down on a regular basis and people having to be helped off by the fire department and trying to walk down a kilometer of tracks.
Yeah.
And they're all wearing high heels
Oh,
or
yeah.
very expensive dress shoes.
Yeah.
And they're walking in slush.
I know. I've seen it. I have seen it.
What do you want? Right.
But hey, there's a part of me that says good for them. So I think we have covered absolutely everything today in our usual perfect way.
Yeah. That is a perfect way to end, a visual of people walking in high heels in the snow.
Yeah, something I wouldn't do because I don't wear high heels. So there.
No.
At least I don't admit to it. So let's
No.
keep that as a mystery.
Yes.
So